Hi everyone, this is Greg Lewis, City Manager in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Welcome to Lebanon in Depth. And today I'm really pleased that we have a subject I think that I have a lot of interest in. I'm also ignorant of a lot of things, and there's a chance for me to learn. And I hope all of us can take this in and think about solar and solarization and what it'll mean to us. And I have with me today on our show a panel of folks that have been really get engaged. I encourage every resident to try to find issues that be engaged in and get involved. And they have chosen for various reasons to get involved. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and a little background, and then how did they come to be involved in solarization. So I think we'll just start and work down the panel.
Sure, thanks so much. So my name is Sarah Simonds, and I currently work for Vital Communities, and I'm sure I'll talk a bit more later, but sure. I actually grew up in Western Maine and have been in Vermont mainly for the past 8-10 years or so. I went to Middlebury College, and that's where I first got interested in solar. I studied architecture, and we were in charge of a solar decathlon house, which is this national competition, and we had to create a totally solar-powered 1,000-square-foot house and build it and ship it to DC and have this competition. And so I got very excited about the topic in college, and then have been working in the nonprofit sector for several years since, and the opportunity of Solarize is kind of the perfect chance to circle back and
that's really nice.
reinvigorate.
It's nice when you do something in college and link in. So some of us went to college, did things, and didn't get linked in for a while, but that's really neat. You got linked in there. It's good. We'll go down to our Enfield.
Okay, I'm Charlie DePuy from Enfield. Being 1/3 the population of Lebanon, Enfield is sort of the tail of the Solarize effort dog. And we are pleased and happy to be working with Lebanon on this project. My background, I've been in the Upper Valley for 45 years. First of all in Vermont, where I had a solo architecture practice. I came here from Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, where I got my degree. I guess I was part of the Back to the Land movement, and I've been involved in various energy saving efforts all those years in the way I've designed buildings and in just the way we've conducted our lives. But this is the first time I've been involved in something in which energy is being produced. And I think that signals a big change for everybody, certainly for me, and I think it's much more enthusing to become an energy producer in a non-harmful way than it is to be an energy saver, although both things are important.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I don't know about being a producer versus saver, and then the various relationships that might entail. That's really interesting. The producer business is really interesting. Now we have Clifton Below, and Clifton, a little background?
Sure. I've lived in Lebanon now about 40 years, I guess, and have been interested in energy sort of all the time. Actually, when I first moved to Lebanon, I worked in a little business called Retrofit Associates, where we were trying to help homes become more energy efficient. And I've worked on my own home energy efficiency for 35 years, and finally added solar last year.
Oh, wow.
But I also got involved at a policy level. I served in the legislature for 12 years, and back in the mid-90s, I was actually the prime sponsor of New Hampshire's net energy metering law, which was the first law that made it possible for customers to have their own renewable energy and run their meter backwards and get credit when they produced more, so they could use that to offset their consumption, perhaps in other times when they didn't produce it. And then I also served 12 years at the Public Utilities Commission as a Public Utilities Commissioner, where we implemented net metering rules and the Renewable Energy Fund, which provides some incentives for people to adopt photovoltaic in businesses as well. And I think it's important. It's part of the whole transition from non-renewable fossil fuels to a more renewable and sustainable energy base that will both help us reduce our carbon emissions and help reduce the global warming, but also help us become more self-sufficient locally, not have to rely on fossil fuels from outside the region.
Well, that's wonderful. I really like that, the breadth of that. That is incredible. Now, as I said, I have a certain level of ignorance. One thing I always use, I haven't this last year, but in my past, I always attended the International City County Managers Association meetings or annual meetings, and I try to find things that I don't know about, and I try to trip into those areas, and sometimes I find it just remarkable, just I'm in another world. And I happened to go into a world where it was a workshop. It was a spin-off of a larger kind of environmental theme. And it was on solarization of a municipality, and it was presented by a city manager from Netherlands, and presented some things that they were doing in the Netherlands, which really was, wow, this is really incredible. I don't, the breadth of it. But I think for people like myself and others, definitionally on solar and solarization, I'm not sure everyone completely understands what that, definitionally what that consists of and means. I think we see it in places, like I'll see it in a restaurant that says it's a solar, and I see it in businesses. But how would you go about in the definitional side of, for explaining to all residents what solar it really might be and what solarization might entail?
Well, I can take that, I think. Feel free to jump in, either of you. In the most basic sense, and that's really all we need to know about as potential consumers of solar, is that when we talk about solar electric or solar photovoltaic, we're talking about panels. And each panel has these nice little slivers of silicone, and you don't have to understand how it works, but when the sun hits those little chips inside of your panel, it produces a flow of electrons, which then are converted into the kind of electricity you need to power your house or to pump back into the grid. And the more panels you have, the more electrons are produced. And when Clifton mentioned net metering, there is a law in place that allows you to have panels on your roof or in your yard or wherever. It flows through your meter back out into the grid, and then you pull back what you use. But for example, in the daytime, you might produce more than you use. So the grid effectively stores that for you, and the power companies keeping a credit and keeping track of how much.
There's a system that's allowing to measure what you're creating.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you get to utilize it yourself. That which you don't utilize, actually the system is taking that into account?
In the old days, it actually spun your meter backwards. So if the solar was coming down from your roof, it spun your meter backwards as it pumped out into the grid, and then as you're using it, it spins it forward. So when we say net metering, at the end of the month, you're looking at the net between what you produce and what you use. And the benefit of being connected to the grid is that if you produce a lot during the day, you get to use that at night. Or if you produce a lot during the summer, you get to use that in the winter when there's not as much sun. And over the course of a whole year, the solar installers are trained, and they're very good at sizing your system almost exactly so that you hit zero on average over the course of a whole year.
So they can really do an assessment of what your situation is and help you understand that and give you the information so you can be making judgments
Exactly.
about it.
And some people choose to try and offset all of their electrical usage with solar. Some people only want to do a proportion. I know plenty of people who cover maybe 60 or 70% of their solar with some panels on their roof. And then the rest of their electric bill they pay as they normally would. But it still helps a lot over the long run.
That's really good. Anyone like to add anything
Well,
to that?
you can actually even size the system to produce more than you need in New Hampshire, which actually I did on my home. So I should end up with a surplus at the end of the year. And I hope to someday have an electric vehicle that I can use some of that surplus with. Or you can, in New Hampshire, you can actually get paid for your surplus, not at the full retail value, but you can get paid for what's called the avoided cost that the utility would otherwise have to pay. And that's maybe only about 8 cents right now, but in the future that's likely to go up. And it's significant that solar tends to produce at hours when electricity is particularly in high demand, because in New England our biggest demand is driven by air conditioning loads, which is driven by sunshine. And it's just in the greater scheme of things, it's important to realize that solar's the source of most of our energy. All of our fossil fuels are actually sort of fossilized sunshine. It's solar energy that's been stored by organic material over millennium.
That's very interesting.
Beside electric cars, we're starting to look at other ways of heating buildings using various devices that use electricity. So these would be cold weather heat pumps,
Wow.
which are various just basically air conditioners in reverse. If you have an air conditioning system in your house right now, it's doubtful that too many people do up in this area, but there may be an adaptation possible. In other words, there seems to be a trend toward more and more use of electricity as an energy conduit.
Now, in terms of this, I don't know if I characterize it as a movement, but at least it's a deployment. What's the extent of the deployment in New Hampshire in terms of what we've described in kind of the definitional side? Do we have any sense of that? I mean, is it widespread? Is it pockets of it?
Well, there's growing interest. In Lebanon, probably 5 or 10 years ago, there might have been 1 or 2 systems. Today, there's about just 16 systems. And so we're hoping to at least double that and perhaps several times more than that through this specialized Solarize effort. And what's special about this is there's a couple things going on. We're looking at with Lebanon and Enfield have teamed up together to do this together, and we're right now interviewing some solar installers, and they've made proposals that would have some discounted financing, discounted cost, reduced cost from maybe what it might otherwise be, and there's tiers so that the more people who sign up, the lower the price will be per watt of PV that you install. And the reason this can occur is because for the installers, they're getting the benefit of some help in marketing the product, because there's going to be we have a good group of volunteers who are going to help spread this idea. And there's sort of a social marketing phenomenon that people see the opportunity to get some savings with, and the more people sign up, the more savings everybody will achieve. So you get some momentum going. And I think another factor is people, there's a lot of uncertainties as to what kind of system to do, or is a particular installer credible or to be trusted. And a lot of people don't want to do all that research themselves to pick out an installer. And so we have a process where we're trying to vet a recommended installer, but people aren't limited to that installer. And in fact, Sarah can tell about this, but some of the other communities that have gone this route, not only have there been a lot of new installations from the Solarize effort and the recommended installer, but other installers have also picked up more work if people have learned about the opportunity. And there's financing opportunities if people don't have the money up front. It's sort of like pre-buying your electricity for the next 10 or 20 years, or as long as the PV panels work. So it takes a while to pay off, but eventually someday, if you keep your house long enough and live long enough, I hope that someday I will have returned my entire original investment and essentially have virtually free electricity for the rest of my life after it's paid off.
And it's worth mentioning that we tend to see an 8 to 12 year range payback on these systems,
Okay.
and the panels themselves are guaranteed to produce electricity up to 25 years.
Oh, so
and
they have a life cycle that long, huh?
they and longer, so that's their guarantee, that's
Excuse
their
me.
warranty, and then the expectation is they can last a decade or more than that.
Wow.
And the panels that were installed, back in the 60s and 70s, they're still there. I mean, there's no moving parts. They're really not degrading. The only issue is the glass eventually gets a little cloudy, and so you get less sun hitting the panels inside. But it's a very stable technology.
Yeah. Well, change, this is change. I think that the thing that's happening here in the panel and elsewhere in some of your movement and discussions is giving information. You're giving information because I think if we have more information, then the possibility of making changes, there's a certain threshold on change. And when you reach that threshold and you're able to go that next mile, you have enough interests that mount up on the side of change that would say that this is really somewhere we should go. So if we'll kind of drill down a little bit. So if I don't know who we should use as a model, but picking a person and saying the person has an interest in doing this. How should the person pursue that interest? What would be advice and guidance that one would extend to that person if they said, well, this is kind of intriguing, I saw the show, I've been thinking about it, I don't quite understand it, but there's some good things I see here. How would they pursue it?
Well, the first thing I would say is mark June 9th on their calendar if they live in Lebanon or Enfield.
What's happening June 9th?
There will be
the world in
an event at the Lebanon Opera House at 5:30 p.m., 5:30 to 7. There's going to be what we're calling the launch event for the Solarize Lebanon-Enfield team. And there's going to be a presentation by the partner installer and the volunteers.
Yeah.
And all the information you need to know to get started will be there. And an opportunity to talk to people who have already gone solar, to talk to your neighbors who are also interested. It's a great one-stop.
So you kind of both you have information, you get a little networking going on.
Exactly.
Right, and people even now can sign up to get on our email list because we're providing updates as we progress towards the launch date. And you can do that either through probably the Town of Enfield or City of Lebanon websites have links, as well as the Vital Communities website, where there's the specific Solarize Lebanon-Enfield page. And if people can't attend the launch event, that's okay too, because we're going to have some ongoing, some follow-up events in Enfield and Lebanon, as well as open houses where people put in PV systems. If people want to look and talk with folks, we have a number of people signed up to be solar.
So they actually had come to a place where actually
Yes.
A person and their family had put together into their house these approaches, and
Right.
they can kick the tires to see how it looks.
And those folks who volunteered to do that are called solar ambassadors because they're folks in the communities who have already gone solar and are willing to talk about their experience. And we're kind of starting to write up little case studies, what the system cost and the payback and things like that. And then people will sign up if they think that they are interested in really exploring this, to have a site visit by the installer, and they'll come to someone's home or perhaps a small business. It's open to small businesses as well.
Which is free.
Which is no cost, no obligation. And they'll have a solar assessment as to whether they've got a viable location, either on their roof or in their yard, that has enough sun to make it worthwhile. And then if they want to go the next step, they'll get a proposal, and we'll decide whether they want to go with that. And there'll be some opportunities to help get that financed if they can't afford to pay the cost up front.
Yeah, I like this because I have my 4 F's about how you approach things. Well, one is be friendly. It sounds like these occasions that are being offered are friendly and informal. There's surely a low threshold for being concerned about exposing yourself into something that's not going to feel comfortable. And and it seems like that's real focus. There's focus at these places and these different sites where different types of sites you could focus on the situation from your perspective. And it sounds like there's certainly when you talk about being fast, because people like, once you get over I like the idea of, once you're on that flywheel and that flywheel lets go and it flips out there and I'm going to solar. This gives you a chance. You could really move a little bit, sounds like you move it. And we can get into maybe more detail about actually, after you made a decision, how long is it going to take to implement your decision. Other thoughts on what a person that's thinking, this sounds like something good to me. It sounds like they should do the launch. Certainly should visit somebody's houses, some of the ambassadors, and get acquainted with them. Other thoughts?
Well, a good consumer might say, well, I should compare prices or compare installers. That's the beauty of this program. Those comparisons are being made right now by a committee of volunteers, not commercially interested in the product, who will decide which solar installer will represent the Lebanon-Enfield effort. Then customers will deal only with that one person, but they'll know that that installer has gone through a vetting effort that is rigorous and in their interests.
And as Clifton said, that is offered as a silver platter first step for folks who are overwhelmed by the process.
An incentive to say, because I hate going by a car because I don't know enough about cars, and I feel. In fact, I had to. Robert's Auto in town actually got my car. I said I don't know anything about it, but I need a car, and they went and found me one. But we're finding somebody to do something that might be kind of alien if you're in it for the first time. And actually, we're having people vet. Am I sounding like that? I mean,
But
that's
it's
kind
worth
of,
saying that it's okay to still shop around.
Sure,
And in fact,
sure.
we have a list of installers with
Yeah,
all sorts of
we're not
contact
exclusivity,
information.
but it is a safety a thing that we're throwing out there. We're throwing out something. Well, this is a little security because it's been vetted by people that have studied this and thought about this, and that gives you a little bit of safety.
The other thing I would mention on the topic of what someone coming into this might be interested in,
Yeah.
it's not only do we happen to have Solarize happening right now, where these wonderful volunteers have an installer that you can get started with, lots of events to very safely get involved and learn more in a public and community-oriented setting. But it's also, even without Solarize, a really good time to be thinking about solar. The price of this technology has been dropping for the past 5 years,
I was
but it's
wondering how the
actually kind
market
of
was.
bottoming out at this point, and we don't expect it to drop a whole lot more. In fact, it's gone up a little bit over the past year because of various code changes. And on top of that, there's a 30% federal tax credit that's only available through the end of 2016 for residences and commercial businesses. And there's a state rebate that's very generous right now. For residences, it's up to $3,750. And that we hope will be around for some of the customers who go through Lebanon. So in terms of timing, Solarize or not, if you are thinking about solar or even curious, it's a good time to be looking
So
into
there's a solar window that's floating by here on our neck of the
Yeah.
woods, and these things, because I have seen in my own experience these windows get shut for some reasons that are unrelated to the merits, but just things happen. So that window is floating around out here. It sounds like it's an opportunity to open that window of solar and see what's on the other side for you, right?
Yes.
There have been a lot of claims made for solar. One of which I heard recently is that worldwide, solar electric is at what has been called grid parity, which is that it's competitive with fossil fuel energy sources. And the one thing I like about the production of solar energy on people's rooftops is that it's kind of tending to reverse the flow of energy in the grid from a central point to a widely distributed little points.
With
That
the centralized
flow
nodes of where energy is being able to be produced.
Right, and now it's lots of little points flowing to lots of other little points, sort of like the internet.
That's an interesting analogy. The internet and the way the internet has changed our lives, and solar certainly seems like another one of those opportunities to change for the better.
Now that said, it's only 1% of our energy source right now.
Right now.
But
Today.
I mean, if everything got, utopia. I'm a dreamer, and I would think that if everything came to be, and people kind of evaluated as you've been evaluating and came to the conclusion, where would we end up? I mean, is there any speculation if the movement catches? I don't know if on fire is the right word, son, but.
Well, there's a lot of potential. I mean, worldwide, I don't have the graphic, but I've seen graphics that show a picture of the Earth, and there's a little dot which shows how much area of the Earth would be needed to power the entire Earth with solar energy. So it's probably we couldn't do it in the Upper Valley with just our rooftops, because of a lot of our rooftops are facing to the north or they're shady.
Yeah.
But some buildings, like my home, will be net positive renewable. Starting actually right now, I've gone positive and probably never will go negative again. So it's possible for individual buildings to actually produce more than they're consuming. So it's going to take a while, but I think the promise is there that solar's probably going to be in the long term our most our primary source. And in a sense, if you think about it, it already is, because solar's what grows all of our plants. All of our food comes from solar energy, and a lot of buildings already have a fair amount of passive solar gain, and some of them, and it turns around and becomes the driver of our air conditioning loads as well. But It has a lot of potential. And so the exciting thing for the Upper Valley is to build that momentum and get sort of a leap forward in a fairly short period of time. And the time frame on this is we're going to launch on June 9th, and starting immediately thereafter, site visits, and people will be able to start signing up, getting proposals and getting contracts. But that will extend over the whole summer. Into September 30th will be the deadline for signing up. And of course, so if people are away on vacation for part of the summer, they can, and they haven't made a decision, they can come back and still probably get a site visit up until sometime in early September. So that would be a good time to sort of close it out, and there'll be a big push. There tend to be a lot of people sign up. Some people sign up early on because they're ready to go, but then there tends to be some momentum towards the end, the deadline, and realizing that this window of opportunity will close both for some of the discounted pricing, but also, quite honestly, there's not a lot of expectation that Congress will necessarily extend the federal tax credit, which is obviously 30% is quite significant.
Yeah.
And if you can't use that tax credit all at once, you can carry that forward on your tax return for several years. We hope that installations will start sometime this summer as well under this program. But the installations, depending on how many people sign up, could take through the fall and even into next spring. And then next year, probably installers are going to be very busy, and prices might start to go up as time runs out to qualify for the federal tax credit. So this is a really good year to be thinking about.
So let's pry into your private life, Clifton. Yeah. You've gone this way. You've made the commitment. You made the choices. You did the evaluation, assessment, and now you moved. You're actually doing your house. So literally, how's that? I mean, I remember when I made the decision to remodel a house, and how that shook me up because once I got going, then the construction, because I remodeled the whole thing. So how did it go? I mean, how did it go? So what's the key? And everyone can chip in. I won't pick on Clifton completely. He may have a bad project, but I think he had a pretty good one probably. But so what's
well,
the steps?
I did, as some people say, I ate my energy efficiency veggies first, and I got my renewable solar dessert last. So I did spend 30 years chipping away at the energy efficiency in my home, adding insulation and improving the windows, interior storm windows, insulating doors, air sealing, coming back and doing some more air sealing, and managed to reduce my energy use by 2/3 before I started to go.
So you had already kind of queued yourself up
Right.
for it, and then you plunged ahead.
Right, and I've converted a lot of our lighting to LED now, so we're only using about 300 kilowatt hours a month on our home now. And so I kind of backed into this and said, how much is my roof good for? And part of that, in my case, I had an old roof that had 3 layers of asphalt shingles. So I spent a couple years actually preparing my roof for this because I had neglected that for a long time. So I actually renovated my roof and put on a new standing seam metal roof. And I did all that. And then the PV system only went on last November. So and of course it was pretty snowy.
How long did it take to get the PV system on? From
well,
when the contractor arrives on the site, start work, then go in?
It was all installed in a single day because I had a system that was pre-assembled in a shop, and they brought a crane and they attached it to the roof in one day. And it took another 2 days, part of 2 days, because it was some bad weather, to finish hooking it up and being ready to turn it on. So it happened very quickly once we made the decision and got the work
ready.
ready.
The last couple of minutes, other insights from people actually went and did this thing? That you would like
I haven't done
comment on?
solar electric yet, but we have a solar hot water system which went in quickly, had some issues. Our installer came and helped us out and ironed them out, and now we don't even think about it. The hot water heater just fills up with hot water. Now, so a lot of people say, well, okay, it's the north, it's snowy. How competitive is this with California, for example?
Right.
Well, collectors are more efficient in cold weather than they are in warm weather, so that's a plus. There is snow, but it's not always on your collector, and quite often you can get some gain, solar gain, through the snow. So, and if you net it out over the year, it's a positive.
That's really wonderful. In our last minute, is there something that we have left unspoken?
Well, you should understand that Lebanon and Enfield are just 2 of 24 towns who have gone through and launched a program like this. And we have seen over 300 residents put solar on their roofs or in their yard over just the past year and a half, which is a huge number. And we expect by the end of these efforts, we'll see 450 total over just a 2-year time period. And that is more than double what we know was existing in the entire 69-town region of the Upper Valley with just those 24 towns.
That's a very positive, uplifting
Right. And since the 1st of March, my system has produced 2.5 megawatt hours. So 2,500 kilowatt hours, so I'm pretty excited.
Well, that's great, you know. And as we close here, I think those who are watching the show, you know, there are going to be links that are available on the Enfield link, on our Leb link, and on Vital Communities. It's nice to see our communities work together, you know, with Lebanon and Enfield. That's really great. And it's nice to have community organizations like Vital Communities who lend their facilitation and their expertise to work with communities as they try to, as really communities are people, and that people are interested in new things, and this has probably been around for a while. So, but I think it certainly is a window here, as we've all said. It is an opportunity for you to do it. So, any last words of wisdom for our what I hope to be new solar citizens?
I would just say it might make more sense than you think, and that is the feedback I get all the time from residents who do go through the Solarize program and go solar. Many of them never thought they were ever going to go solar, and here they are now with panels on their roof. So it's worth at least looking into it.
That's marvelous.
And several of our local banks are offering somewhat discounted financing terms for people who participate.
Socially minded banks. Anything from Enfield you'd like to add, Ann?
Just the email and the website. Do you want to give those?
Yeah, so vitalcommunities.org/solarize, and all the information will be there. We'll make sure there's a link to it on the video.
Marvelous, marvelous.
And I just wanted to mention, this is a volunteer citizens effort in Lebanon and Enfield. The towns have sort of expressed their endorsement and support, but it's not really a town function that this is being organized under.
This is a people thing.
Right, it is a people thing, and with the support of the nonprofit Vital Communities.
And we have this, obviously, the support of the town management.
So
Well, thank you for being here. I would encourage everyone to look into solarization and take advantage of the resources been offered at the program today. And that date again for the launch?
June 9th, 5:30 at the Lebanon Opera House.
You know where the Lebanon Opera House is. That's a pretty, you know, very few people don't know where the Lebanon Opera House is. If you don't know, go towards City Hall. You'll see a nice big opera house. And do Solarize, you know, if you think it through. And do consider it. Do carefully consider it. Thank you, everyone, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Let's let the sun flow, and let's have some sunlight, and let's have some solar. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.